Looking at deductive reasoning, 2-1 we looked at inductive reasoning. Just a refresher, inductive reasoning was looking at past patterns. So we were looking at number patterns, picture patterns, scatter plot, looking at a pattern of events and then coming up with our conjecture or educated guess. Okay? This is not looking at a pattern. It's looking at a given set of facts. So deductive reasoning, process of reasoning logically from given facts to form a conclusion or a conjecture. Okay, the people that use this would be doctors and mechanics. A doctor doesn't look at you in his office for 20 minutes and look at a pattern and then come up with his diagnosis. You come to him, give him the facts, your symptoms, similar to if your car is broken. You give the facts, they come up with a conclusion based on that. Okay, so they don't look at patterns of events, they look at given facts. So there are two forms of deductive reasoning that we're going to look at. Okay, one is law of detachment. The law of detachment detaches an if-then sentence. So if the hypothesis is true, then the conclusion is also true. That's what the law of detachment is talking about. So let's actually give an example so it would make sense. So remember, law of detachment detaches a sentence. The other law that we're going to look at does the opposite. It pulls everything together. Okay, so this is going to detach an if-then sentence. If it is raining, then I will bring my umbrella. That is the given fact. Okay, that is totally a true statement. They're going to tell you that it's true. Okay, after that, the person said it is starting to rain. What is the conclusion based on this? I'm going to bring an umbrella. Okay. The hardest part about this section is that kids overthink these questions. Okay, so please don't. Please, please don't. Give you another example of law of detachment. The true statement, if two angles add up to 180, then they are supplementary. Okay, well then I'm going to tell you that measure of angle A plus the measure of angle B equals 180. Can't say they're supplementary. What would we have to say? More specific. Thank you. We have to use what they gave us. Okay, so we would say angle A and angle B are supplementary. Use these specifics in the question or the statement. So again, law of detachment, because as soon as we go over the other law, for some reason your brains, just because I've been doing this for many years, will confuse the two. Remember that law of detachment detaches the sentence into chunks. Okay? Law of syllogism, which we're about to look at, does the opposite. It links everything together. Questions on law of detachment? Okay. Law of syllogism, this is the cookie cutter process that we're going to look at here. So let's look at these two first. Think of it as a domino effect. If X, then Y, and if Y happens, then Z. Okay, so if this happens, then this is going to happen, and if that happens, then this is going to happen. The very first thing happens means that the very last thing is going to happen. That's what that if X then Z sentence is talking about. So it's going to link it all together. Think of it as dominoes tipping each other over. So let's look at this example. If I get an A, then my parents will be happy. If my parents are happy, then they'll let me stay out later. So those are two true statements in somebody's life. What would the law of syllogism conclude? If I get an A, comma, then, a lot of kids forget the word then. My parents okay, and you do want to put the word parents in only so that it reads well. If you say if I get an A, then they'll let me stay out later, you don't really say who they are. So since we're talking about parents and we skip over that part when we summarize it, it's good to throw it back in there. So if I get an A, then my parents will let me stay out later. On the test, I'm going to ask you to come up with your own scenario. Okay, you cannot use this one. Okay, so from start to finish, you need to have the 2 green sentences right there. Okay, and then you need your summarizing statement. The law of syllogism allows you to conclude that. Let's try one more example. And in this one, I forgot the word then, so you can add that in. If Bobby drives too fast, then he'll get a speeding ticket. If he gets a speeding ticket, then he will get his car taken away. Yes.
Bobby drives fast.
Okay.
Not true. He might not get caught. Come on, Bobby. Let's go with the cops on you.
So there's some differences between the 2 laws. Law of detachment, again, detaches the sentence. Also, look at the conclusion on the law of detachment. It's not an if-then sentence, is it?
No.
What we wrote here.
No.
Okay, it's a detached part of the if-then sentence. The law of syllogism, on the other hand, our answers are in if-then form. Okay, so there's also a difference in that. That link doesn't work anymore, so we're not going to click on that. But are there questions on the 2 laws before we look at one last example? Okay, this is not in your notes, so I just want you to read this, and then we're going to conclude what we're going to conclude. Read through it. Okay. Now they don't have the conclusion on here, but what law would this probably be linked to that we just learned? The law of syllogism. So let's write.
Do my homework, I lose everything.
If I do my homework, then what?
I'll lose everything.
I'll lose everything. Okay.
Taking a picture of that.
Okay, questions on this? So you can have an infinite amount of if-then sentences. Okay, the law of syllogism will always link what 2 things together?
Everything and everything else.
The very first thing, the if part, with the very ending of those if-then sentences. Because there's that domino effect. If this happens, then this, and if that happens, then this, and if that happens, then this. So if the first thing happens, the last thing is going to happen. Law of detachment detaches. Law of syllogism pulls it together. Questions?